Machiavelli has been dead for 500 years, and he's still superior to you. Not because he was smarter, because he saw what you refused to see. Power doesn't care about your morals. It doesn't negotiate with fairness. It operates on laws most people are too comfortable to learn. 11 laws. Each one exposes why you're losing a game you didn't know you were playing. Most won't finish this. They'll reject it, defend their weakness, cling to the lies that keep them controlled. But you're still here, so let's see if you can handle the truth. Machiavelli is still superior to you, not because of when he lived, because of what he understood. While everyone around him worshipped fairness and morality, he watched how power actually moved. He saw princes fall because they were too good. He saw empires collapse because leaders needed approval. He watched the righteous get crushed by the ruthless over and over, and instead of lying about it, he wrote it down. That honesty made him the most hated name in philosophy. But the ones who read him, they didn't hate him. They used him. They built empires, shaped governments, dominated their environments while others debated ethics. You've been taught the opposite, that being good wins, that fairness matters, that if you just play by the rules, respect will come. It won't, because the people controlling you already know these laws. They've read the manual. They understand that morality is theater, that perception is power, that fear creates order, and they've been using that knowledge against you your entire life. Not because they're evil, because they're awake. You're operating with one set of rules while they're operating with another. That gap is why you're struggling, why you feel used, why your kindness gets punished instead of rewarded. 11 laws, not suggestions, operations. Each one dismantles a belief that's kept you weak. Each one reveals a mechanism of control you didn't know existed. This isn't philosophy for debate, it's psychology for application. By the end, you'll see every interaction differently, every power dynamic, every relationship, every authority structure. You'll recognize the game, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Machiavelli is still superior because he refused to lie to make people comfortable. These laws do the same. Let's begin. You've been lied to your entire life. They told you fairness matters. They told you the world rewards those who play by the rules. But look around. Who's winning? Not the fair, not the just. The ones who win are the ones who understand that fairness is a weapon designed to keep you compliant. Machiavelli knew this 5 centuries ago. He watched men cling to morality while others seized power. He saw the pattern. The weak demand fairness because they need protection. The strong create the rules, then break them when convenient. Fairness is the fantasy sold to those without leverage. Every social structure operates on this principle. You see it at work, in relationships, in politics. Someone proposes fairness when they're losing. They appeal to conscience, to ethics, to some universal standard. But power doesn't negotiate, it dictates. I've watched people spend years waiting for recognition, for respect, for their fair share. They believed effort equals reward. They believed integrity would be noticed. Instead, they were passed over by those who understood the game. The ruthless don't wait for permission. They don't appeal to fairness. They create outcomes through calculated action and strategic positioning. The moment you accept this, everything shifts. You stop expecting reciprocity. You stop believing that good behavior guarantees good results. You recognize fairness as a control mechanism, something invoked by those who fear direct confrontation. Machiavelli wrote that a prince must learn not to be good, not because evil is virtuous, but because survival demands flexibility. Morality becomes a prison when your opponents have none. You're bound by conscience while they maneuver freely. This isn't philosophy, it's observation. History belongs to those who seized it, not those who deserved it. Consider warfare. No general wins by being fair. Victory comes through deception, through exploiting weakness, through creating conditions where the enemy has no choice but to surrender. Sun Tzu understood this. Machiavelli understood this. But you were taught the opposite. You were taught to share, to compromise, to believe everyone operates with the same moral framework. That belief is the chain. It keeps you predictable. It keeps you controlled. The moment someone realizes you'll always choose fairness, they know exactly how to manipulate you. They'll frame every negotiation as a moral test, and you'll sacrifice power for the comfort of feeling righteous. But here's what they don't tell you. Fairness is a currency that only works when both sides honor it. The second one player abandons the social contract, the other becomes a fool for maintaining it. You're not immoral for recognizing this. You're awake. Machiavelli didn't advocate cruelty for pleasure. He advocated realism over delusion. He understood that power respects force, not intention. If you want control, you must accept that the world doesn't operate on cosmic justice. It operates on leverage, on perception, on the willingness to act when others hesitate. Fairness is what the weak demand. Dominance is what the strong create. And dominance isn't about violence, it's about understanding which rules matter and which are designed to keep you weak. Virtue has nothing to do with goodness. That's the first illusion you need to destroy. When Machiavelli used the word virtù, he wasn't talking about kindness or compassion. He was talking about mastery, the ability to impose your will on chaos. Virtue is control. It's the capacity to act decisively when others freeze. It's the discipline to execute strategy without emotional interference. Society rebranded this word to make you weak. They turned virtue into submissiveness, into compliance, into the suppression of your own power. They made you believe that being good means being harmless. But harmless people don't shape reality. They endure it. Morality is performance. It's the script society hands you to keep you predictable. You're told to be honest, to be generous, to sacrifice for the collective good. But watch carefully. Those who preach morality the loudest rarely follow it themselves. Politicians speak of justice while manipulating votes. Corporations advertise ethics while maximizing profit through exploitation. Religious institutions demand purity while concealing corruption. Morality is the mask. Power is what operates beneath it. Machiavelli understood that rulers must appear moral to maintain legitimacy, but they must act ruthlessly to maintain control. The appearance satisfies the masses. The ruthlessness secures the throne. You've been conditioned to confuse reputation with reality. People don't care what you actually do. They care what they believe you do. This is why manipulation works. This is why liars thrive. A man who controls perception controls consequence. If you can make people believe you're virtuous, you gain their trust. If you can make them fear your wrath, you gain their respect. Both are tools. Neither requires you to actually embody the traits you project. I've seen leaders with no integrity command absolute loyalty because they understood how to perform authority. I've seen genuinely honest people dismissed as weak because they failed to project strength. The world doesn't reward your internal state. It rewards your external presentation. This is where most people break. They can't reconcile the gap between morality and effectiveness. They believe power must be ethical to be legitimate. But history tells a different story. The Roman Empire wasn't built on fairness. The Renaissance wasn't financed by saints. Revolutions aren't won by those who refuse to get their hands dirty. Power consolidates in the hands of those willing to act without the approval of the morally paralyzed. Machiavelli watched Florence crumble because its leaders prioritized appearing righteous over making hard decisions. He watched foreign powers conquer Italy because Italians debated ethics while others seized territory. Control isn't about being liked. It's about being effective. The strategic mind separates emotion from execution. You can have personal ethics. Most effective operators do, but you cannot allow those ethics to become vulnerabilities. The moment your opponent knows your moral boundaries, they know how to trap you. They'll engineer situations where your conscience forces you into losing positions. They'll weaponize your integrity against you. Machiavelli's lesson isn't that morality is worthless. It's that morality without power is meaningless. You can be as virtuous as you want once you've secured control. But if you prioritize virtue over survival, someone less constrained will remove you from the game. Theater has its place. Just don't confuse the performance with the strategy. And never believe your own propaganda. Reality doesn't matter if no one believes it. This is the hardest truth for rational minds to accept. You think facts speak for themselves. You think competence will be recognized. You think the truth eventually surfaces. But the world doesn't operate on objective reality. It operates on collective perception. What people believe becomes more powerful than what actually exists. Machiavelli understood this when he wrote that it's more important to seem virtuous than to be virtuous. He wasn't advocating dishonesty for its own sake. He was acknowledging that human psychology responds to appearance, not essence. You can be the most skilled person in the room, but if you don't project authority, you'll be dismissed. You can be right about everything, but if you can't control the narrative, you'll be overruled by someone more persuasive. Look at how power actually moves through society. Elections aren't won by the best policies, they're won by the best stories. Products don't succeed because they're superior. They succeed because of branding and perception management. Reputations are built and destroyed not by actions, but by how those actions are framed. A single accusation can end a career even without evidence. A well-timed lie can spark wars. This isn't theory, this is operational reality. The person who controls what others believe controls their behavior. If you can make people perceive you as dangerous, they'll submit without you lifting a finger. If you can make them perceive you as weak, they'll test your boundaries relentlessly. Perception creates the conditions that determine outcomes. This is why silence and mystery are weapons. When you reveal everything, you give others the data to predict you. When you remain strategically ambiguous, you force them to fill gaps with their own projections. Those projections are always more extreme than reality. People fear the unknown more than the known threat. I've watched leaders rise to dominance simply by mastering calculated opacity. They don't explain. They don't justify. They act, then let others interpret. The interpretation amplifies their power because imagination is more potent than fact. You become whatever they fear most. This is why charismatic manipulators thrive. They don't need substance, they need the ability to make you believe they possess it. Most people obsess over being right. They compile evidence, build arguments, present logic. Then they're confused when none of it matters, because they're fighting on the wrong battlefield. The battlefield isn't truth, it's belief. Lawyers don't win cases by proving innocence. They win by creating reasonable doubt in perception. Marketers don't sell quality. They sell the feeling of quality. Political strategists don't debate policy. They weaponize emotion and identity. You can have every fact on your side and still lose if your opponent controls how those facts are interpreted. Machiavelli knew that the masses judge by appearances and outcomes, not by process or intention. If you win, you're a hero. If you lose, you're a villain. The same actions produce opposite perceptions based purely on results. This doesn't mean reality is irrelevant. It means reality is secondary to how reality is packaged. You need substance, but substance without presentation is invisible. Think of it as a two-layer system. The operational layer where actual capability exists, and the perceptual layer where reputation and influence exist. Most people only develop one layer. They're either competent but unknown, or charismatic but hollow. True power requires both. You must be effective enough that your results can't be denied, and strategic enough that those results are perceived as you want them to be. Control the frame, and you control the game. Let others define you, and you've already lost. But understanding this creates a new problem, one that most never anticipate. The ones who talk the most control the least. You see it everywhere. Desperate attempts to justify, to explain, to be understood. Every word is a leak of power. Every explanation is an admission of uncertainty. The strong don't explain themselves, they act, then let the silence do the work. Machiavelli observed that the most feared leaders weren't the loudest. They were the ones whose intentions remained unclear. Silence creates a vacuum, and humans instinctively fill vacuums with their worst fears. When you speak constantly, you become predictable. When you withhold, you become dangerous. People project their anxieties onto your silence, and those projections always amplify your presence beyond what words could achieve. Watch how power actually communicates. A CEO doesn't explain every decision. They issue directives and move on. A judge doesn't debate with defendants. They deliver verdicts. Military commanders don't justify strategy to foot soldiers. They give orders. The moment you start explaining yourself, you've shifted from authority to negotiation. You've signaled that approval matters to you. And the second people sense you need their validation, they have leverage over you. Silence is the refusal to negotiate your position. It's the assertion that your actions are self-evident and require no defense. This creates psychological dominance because it forces others to interpret your moves without guidance, and interpretation always favors the mysterious. I've tested this principle in high-stakes environments. In negotiations, the person who speaks first usually loses. In confrontations, the one who remains calm and quiet, while others spiral into emotional justification, gains the upper hand. Silence isn't passive. It's a calculated withholding of information that forces your opponent to reveal more than they intended. They'll talk to fill the void. They'll over-explain, over-justify, expose their weaknesses, trying to provoke a response from you. Meanwhile, you've given them nothing. No emotional tells, no strategic leaks, no vulnerabilities to exploit. This is how intelligence operatives extract information, not through interrogation, but through creating discomfort in silence that makes people volunteer what they should protect. The weak equate silence with weakness because they can't tolerate uncertainty. They need constant validation, constant feedback, constant reassurance that they exist and matter. So they talk. They announce their intentions. They telegraph their moves. They seek approval for decisions they should simply execute. This makes them easy to predict and easier to control. You know what they'll do because they've already told you. You know what they fear because they've revealed it through their justifications. Machiavelli understood that mystery generates respect in a way transparency never can. When people don't fully understand your methods or motivations, they assume you're operating on a level beyond their comprehension. That assumption creates deference. But silence isn't just withholding speech. It's strategic absence, knowing when to disappear, when to let situations develop without your input, when to let others compete for your attention instead of you competing for theirs. The scarcest resource commands the highest value, and your presence becomes scarce the moment you stop making yourself constantly available. Leaders who are always accessible are never respected. They've made themselves common. The ones who appear selectively, who speak rarely, who leave space between their actions, they become events. People anticipate them, prepare for them, fear disappointing them. You don't gain this through aggression. You gain it through discipline. The discipline to hold your position without needing to defend it. The discipline to let your work speak while you remain silent. But even silence has limits, and knowing when to break it is where true dominance reveals itself. Power isn't about force, it's about definition. Whoever controls the language controls the outcome. Whoever frames the problem dictates the solution. This is the invisible battlefield where wars are won before a single shot is fired. Machiavelli recognized that political power rests on the ability to shape collective understanding. If you can make people see the world through your lens, you don't need to coerce them. They'll enforce your will themselves. They'll police each other. They'll internalize your definitions as natural law. This is why propaganda works. This is why narratives matter more than facts. The side that defines what's normal, what's acceptable, what's reasonable, wins by default. Everyone else is fighting uphill against a reality they didn't create. Look at how this operates in everyday dominance. In a business meeting, the person who sets the agenda controls the conversation. In a relationship, whoever defines what counts as fair or reasonable holds the power. In legal battles, framing determines guilt or innocence before evidence is even presented. If someone accuses you of being defensive, you're already trapped. Defending yourself proves their point, and not defending yourself concedes it. This is linguistic manipulation at the structural level. The frame was set, and every move you make operates within boundaries someone else established. Machiavelli would tell you to reject their frame entirely. Don't argue within their reality. Impose your own. Redefine the terms. Shift the context. Make them respond to your definitions instead of you responding to theirs. I've seen entire organizations controlled by whoever mastered this principle first. A manager who frames every problem as a question of loyalty makes dissent look like betrayal. A partner who defines love as sacrifice makes boundaries look like selfishness. A government that frames security as the highest value makes freedom look like recklessness. Once the definition is accepted, behavior follows automatically. People will surrender rights, resources, and autonomy to stay consistent with the reality they've internalized. You don't need violence when you control perception at this level. You just need everyone to believe your definitions are objective truth rather than strategic constructs designed to serve your interests. This is where psychology becomes warfare. Reframing isn't manipulation for its own sake. It's survival. If you allow others to define you, your actions, your intentions, you've already lost. They'll interpret everything through a lens that serves them. They'll make you the villain in a story they're telling themselves. But if you can redefine the narrative first, you control how you're perceived and how your actions are justified. Politicians do this constantly. They don't answer the question asked. They answer the question they wish had been asked. They reject unfavorable frames and substitute their own. That's not what this is about. What this is really about is, and if they're skilled enough, everyone forgets the original question and debates within the new reality they just created. Machiavelli's Florence fell because competing factions couldn't agree on a shared definition of power, loyalty, or threat. While they debated terms, foreign powers who had already defined reality for themselves simply acted. Those who hesitate to define are defined by others. Those who accept someone else's framing are already playing a game they can't win. You must be the one who names things, who decides what success looks like, who determines which metrics matter. Control the criteria, and you control the judgment. Control the narrative, and you control the consequence. This isn't about lying. It's about understanding that reality is negotiable at the level of interpretation, and whoever negotiates first has the advantage. But defining reality is only the beginning. The real question is what you do when people refuse to see the world you've created. You think you're being generous, you think you're building goodwill, but what you're actually doing is training people to take without giving back. Kindness without power is indistinguishable from weakness. Machiavelli wrote that liberality, giving freely, destroys a prince because it creates expectation without respect. People don't value what comes easily. They don't respect what's offered without condition. When you give without leverage, you're not being virtuous. You're being exploited. And the worst part is you're doing it to yourself. You've convinced yourself that unconditional kindness is noble, that eventually people will recognize your generosity and reciprocate. But that's not how human psychology works. People reciprocate when there's consequence for not reciprocating. Remove the consequence, and you've removed the incentive. Every relationship operates on exchange, not explicit transaction, but implicit balance. When that balance tips too far in one direction, resentment builds, not gratitude. The person receiving feels guilty or entitled, and both emotions breed contempt. The person giving feels used, then bitter when their sacrifice goes unacknowledged. This dynamic plays out in friendships, in workplaces, in families. You're always available, always helpful, always accommodating, and slowly, imperceptibly, you become invisible. Not because people are inherently cruel, but because you've made yourself common. You've taught them that your time, your energy, your resources have no cost, and humans assign value based on scarcity and cost. Give freely, and you become worthless in their calculus. Not because of malice, because of psychology. I've watched this pattern destroy careers and relationships. The employee who works overtime without demanding recognition gets passed over for promotion because management assumes they're fine with their current position. The friend who's always available becomes the one people call last because there's no urgency. You'll always be there anyway. The partner who sacrifices everything becomes the one taken for granted because sacrifice has become the baseline expectation. Kindness signals submission when it's not backed by boundary. Generosity signals desperation when it's not paired with the willingness to withdraw. Machiavelli understood that a ruler must be capable of cruelty, not because cruelty is good, but because the capacity for it makes kindness meaningful. When people know you can say no, your yes has weight. When they know you're incapable of refusal, your compliance is worthless. This doesn't mean you shouldn't help people. It means every act of kindness should be strategic. Help those who can help you. Invest in relationships where reciprocity is possible. And when you give, make sure they understand it's a choice, not an obligation. Make your generosity scarce and conditional, not openly transactional, that's crude, but structured in a way that maintains respect. You help when it serves a larger purpose. You withdraw when you're taken for granted. You create an environment where people understand that access to you is earned, not assumed. This is how loyalty is built, not through endless giving, but through calibrated investment in people who demonstrate they're worth it. The hardest part is accepting that most people you're kind to will never reciprocate at the level you've given. They'll take what's offered, feel momentarily grateful, then move on. This isn't personal, it's human nature. People are wired to conserve resources and maximize gain. If you're offering resources without cost, they'll extract until you're empty. Machiavelli observed that people love at their convenience but fear at yours. Love is voluntary and fickle. Fear is consistent and reliable. You don't need to be cruel, but you need to be capable of it. You need people to understand that your kindness exists alongside your capacity for ruthlessness. That combination, generosity paired with boundary, is what creates genuine respect. Without it, your kindness is just permission for others to control you. And if kindness makes you controllable, what does that say about the nature of control itself? You want to be liked. That desire is your cage. Every decision filtered through the need for approval is a decision made from weakness. Machiavelli posed the question directly: is it better to be loved or feared? His answer was unambiguous. Fear, when not accompanied by hatred, creates stability. Love is conditional and fragile. It evaporates under pressure. It shifts with circumstance. People love you when you're useful, entertaining, or non-threatening. But the moment you make a hard decision, set a boundary, or prioritize your interests over theirs, that love vanishes. Fear doesn't vanish. Fear is structural. It doesn't require affection or agreement. It requires only the knowledge that consequence exists and will be enforced. Look at how organizations actually function. The manager everyone likes is rarely the one people respect. Employees take advantage of permissiveness. They miss deadlines, ignore protocols, assume leniency. The manager people fear, not through cruelty, but through consistent enforcement of standards, runs a tighter operation. Projects finish on time. Rules are followed. Performance improves. This isn't because fear is morally superior, it's because fear creates clarity. When people know exactly what happens if they fail, they calibrate their behavior accordingly. When they're uncertain whether consequence will be enforced, they test boundaries. They push limits. They gamble that your need for approval will override your willingness to discipline. And usually, they're right. Most leaders would rather be liked than effective. That preference destroys their authority. Approval seeking is a negotiation you've already lost. The moment you need someone to like you, they control you. They sense the desperation. They feel the imbalance. You'll compromise your position, dilute your standards, sacrifice your objectives to maintain their affection. This makes you predictable and manipulable. Machiavelli understood that the prince who fears being hated will make decisions designed to please rather than decisions designed to work. Those decisions accumulate into weakness. Small compromises become systemic vulnerability. You avoid conflict, so problems fester. You accommodate unreasonable demands, so demands escalate. You signal that emotional comfort matters more than results. so people optimize for comfort instead of performance. The entire structure degrades because you couldn't tolerate being disliked. Fear doesn't mean terror, it means respect enforced by consequence. It means people understand that crossing you has cost. Not arbitrary cruelty, calculated response. When someone violates a boundary, you don't explain or negotiate. You enforce. Immediately. Consistently. Without emotion. This creates a predictable environment where everyone knows the rules and the penalties. That predictability is what generates order. Chaos comes from inconsistency. When people don't know what will trigger consequence, they live in anxiety. When consequence is clear and proportional, they simply comply. I've implemented this in environments where approval seeking had created dysfunction. The shift was immediate. Once people understood that standards would be enforced regardless of how they felt about it, behavior changed. Not because they suddenly respected me, because they respected the system. And that respect created the conditions for actual effectiveness. The psychology here is simple but brutal. Humans are hierarchical animals. We respond to power structures. We test authority to determine where we sit in the dominance hierarchy. If you signal that approval matters to you, you've placed yourself beneath the people whose approval you seek. You've inverted the hierarchy. They become the authority, and you become the supplicant. But if you signal that consequence will be enforced independent of their feelings, you establish dominance. Not through aggression, through certainty. Machiavelli's insight was that stability comes from fear of consequence, not from affection. Empires weren't held together by love. They were held together by the understanding that rebellion would be crushed. You don't need to be cruel. You just need to be willing to enforce standards when others would rather be liked. That willingness is what separates leaders from followers. But enforcement only works if people believe you're capable of detachment. And detachment is something most people can never master. The moment you care too much, you've given away control. Emotion is information leakage. Every reaction is data your opponent can use against you. When you're angry, you're predictable. When you're anxious, you're manipulable. When you're desperate, you're already defeated. Machiavelli observed that successful rulers maintained cold calculation even in crisis. They didn't let sentiment cloud judgment. They didn't let attachment create vulnerability. This isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about understanding that emotion is a tool, not a master. You can feel whatever you want internally. But the second you let those feelings dictate your behavior, you've handed leverage to anyone watching. Detachment is the refusal to be moved by forces outside your control. It's the capacity to observe your own reactions without being controlled by them. Watch how emotional people operate. They're slaves to circumstance. Someone insults them and they must respond. Someone threatens them and they panic. Someone rejects them and they collapse. Every external event creates an internal storm that hijacks their decision-making. They're not choosing their actions, they're reacting, and reactions are predictable. If I know what triggers you, I know how to control you. I can engineer situations that provoke the exact response I need. This is how manipulation works at the interpersonal level. Emotional people are easy to steer because they're driven by feelings they can't regulate. The detached person sees the manipulation attempt, recognizes the emotional hook, and simply doesn't bite. They observe the provocation without being provoked. That non-reaction disrupts the entire strategy. I've used this in negotiations where the other party assumed emotion would compromise my judgment. They'd introduce artificial urgency, appeal to fairness, invoke guilt, all designed to trigger emotional decision-making. But when you're detached, Those tactics fail. You see them for what they are, theater designed to extract concessions. You wait. You let them escalate their emotional appeals while you remain unmoved. Eventually, they exhaust their leverage and accept your terms because you've demonstrated that pressure doesn't work on you. Stoic philosophers understood this centuries before neuroscience confirmed it. The prefrontal cortex, your rational center, gets overridden by the amygdala when emotion spikes. Detachment is keeping the rational system online even under stress. It's recognizing that feelings are temporary neurochemical responses, not truth. This is where most people fail. They confuse detachment with apathy. They think being unemotional means not caring about anything. But that's not what Machiavelli advocated. He cared deeply about Florence. He cared about political stability and Italian unification. What he didn't do was let those feelings compromise his strategic clarity. You can care about outcomes without being attached to any single path. You can value relationships without being enslaved by them. Detachment means you're willing to walk away. You're willing to endure loss. You're willing to sacrifice comfort for long-term position. Emotional attachment makes you negotiable, detachment makes you immovable, and immovability is power in any environment where others are trying to shift you. The test of detachment is simple. Can you lose something important without it destroying your composure? Can you be insulted without needing to retaliate? Can you watch an opportunity disappear without panic? Most people can't. They're so attached to outcomes, to identity, to the opinions of others that any threat to those things triggers crisis. This makes them controllable. You threaten what they're attached to, and they'll comply with your demands to protect it. But if you're detached, if you've already accepted potential loss as part of the game, there's nothing to threaten. You become untouchable, not through invulnerability, but through indifference to the weapons others wield. Machiavelli's prince was effective because he understood that emotional attachment to morality, to loyalty, to consistency would be weaponized against him. So he detached from those constraints, not permanently, strategically. He used them when useful and discarded them when necessary. That flexibility is what separates the dominated from the dominant. But detachment alone isn't enough. You also need them to remember what happens when they mistake your calm for weakness. History doesn't remember the merciful. It remembers the effective. You can spend your entire life being good, being fair, being kind, and you'll die unnamed. But act decisively, reshape your environment, leave an undeniable mark, and centuries later people are still analyzing your methods. Machiavelli himself is proof. 500 years dead, and his name still triggers moral panic. Not because he was cruel, because he was honest about how power actually works. The righteous fade into obscurity because righteousness is common. Everyone believes they're good. Everyone thinks they're justified. But ruthlessness, the willingness to do what others won't, to cross lines others respect, to prioritize outcome over approval, that's rare. And rarity creates legacy. Look at who gets remembered. Caesar crossed the Rubicon and became eternal. Napoleon conquered Europe and redefined warfare. Genghis Khan built an empire that stretched across continents. None of them were nice. None of them prioritized being liked. They prioritized impact. They made decisions that altered the trajectory of civilizations. Meanwhile, countless good people lived and died without leaving a trace. This isn't a moral judgment. It's an observation about how memory works. The world doesn't memorialize comfort. It memorializes disruption. The ones who broke things, built things, forced change, those are the ones who survive in collective consciousness. Righteousness is forgettable because it's passive. It responds to moral frameworks created by others. Ruthlessness is active. It creates new realities that others must respond to. The righteous wait for permission. They need consensus. They need everyone to agree that their actions are justified before they move. This makes them slow, ineffective, and ultimately irrelevant. By the time they've gathered enough moral approval to act, the moment has passed. Someone more decisive has already shaped the outcome. Machiavelli watched this paralyze Florence. Endless debates about the right course of action while their enemies simply acted. The righteous talked. The ruthless conquered. And when history was written, only the conquerors mattered. This is the trap of moral superiority. It feels virtuous, but it produces nothing. You get to maintain your self-image as a good person, but you sacrifice all influence over actual events. You become a spectator in a game played by people willing to get their hands dirty. I've seen this dynamic in every competitive environment. The person who agonizes over every ethical dimension gets outmaneuvered by the person who identifies the objective and pursues it without hesitation. Not because ethics don't matter, but because overthinking ethics is a form of cowardice disguised as virtue. You're not being careful. You're being afraid. Afraid of judgment, afraid of consequence, afraid of being seen as the villain. But here's what the ruthless understand. Someone will always cast you as the villain. If you win, you're dangerous. If you disrupt the status quo, you're threatening. People will moralize against you not because you're wrong, but because you're effective. So the question becomes, do you want to be remembered as good, or do you want to be remembered at all? Ruthlessness isn't sadism. It's clarity. It's the ability to see what needs to happen and execute without the paralysis of excessive empathy. Machiavelli didn't advocate unnecessary cruelty. He advocated necessary cruelty, the kind that achieves objectives and prevents larger chaos. A swift, decisive act that resolves a problem permanently versus prolonged niceness that allows the problem to metastasize. The ruthless understand that sometimes the moral choice is the harsh choice. That letting a threat persist because you're too squeamish to eliminate it causes more suffering than immediate action. The righteous can't make that calculation. They're too invested in feeling good about themselves, and that investment costs them everything. Because while they're preserving their moral purity, someone else is building the future, and that future won't include their name. But being remembered means nothing if you don't first survive the present. And survival depends on understanding who actually holds power over you. You're addicted to approval, and that addiction is a leash. Every time you check if someone likes you, respects you, agrees with you, you've handed them control. The need for validation is the most exploitable weakness in human psychology. Machiavelli understood that rulers who required popular approval became prisoners of public opinion. They couldn't make hard decisions. They couldn't enforce unpopular policies. They became reactive instead of strategic, constantly adjusting their positions based on how others responded. This isn't leadership, it's performance. You're not directing outcomes. You're auditioning for acceptance. And the moment someone realizes you need their validation, they own you. They can withhold it, dangle it, weaponize it. Your entire decision-making process becomes hostage to their judgment. Watch how this operates in relationships. The person who constantly asks, "Are you mad at me?" has already lost. They've signaled that the other person's emotional state determines their behavior. That signal creates an exploitable pattern. The other person can manipulate through silence, through disapproval, through the strategic withdrawal of affection. They don't need to argue or explain. They just need to seem displeased, and the validation seeker will adjust. This dynamic exists in workplaces, families, friendships. Anywhere one person needs something from another, that need creates leverage. The one who cares less controls the relationship. The one who can walk away without emotional collapse holds all the cards. Validation seeking is the announcement that you can't walk away, that you need them more than they need you, and that imbalance is permanent until you break the addiction. I've tested this principle deliberately. In environments where I needed cooperation, I stopped seeking approval. I stated positions without softening them. I made decisions without consensus. I stopped checking if people were comfortable with my choices. The initial response was resistance. People test whether you actually mean it. They escalate disapproval to see if you'll fold. But when you don't, when you continue operating independent of their validation, the dynamic shifts. They start seeking your approval. They adjust their behavior to align with your standards because they realize their disapproval doesn't move you. This isn't manipulation. It's power redistribution. You've removed the leverage they had over you, and in doing so, created leverage over them. Not through force, through indifference to their judgment. The psychology here is ancient. Humans are social animals wired to avoid ostracism. Historically, being rejected by the group meant death, so we evolved to be hypersensitive to social approval. That wiring made sense in small tribal environments, but in modern contexts, that same wiring makes you controllable. You'll compromise your values, sacrifice your goals, tolerate abuse, all to avoid the feeling of rejection. Machiavelli would tell you that feeling is a weakness to be overcome, not a signal to be obeyed. The ones who transcend the need for approval are the ones who can act without constraint. They're not paralyzed by the fear of being disliked. They're not negotiating with every person whose opinion might matter. They decide, execute, and let others adjust to the new reality. This doesn't mean you ignore all feedback. It means you filter it through your own judgment rather than treating it as law. Someone's disapproval is data, not a command. You consider it, extract anything useful, and discard the rest. You don't need them to agree. You don't need them to understand. You need them to comply or remove themselves from your environment. That's the test of whether you've broken the validation addiction. Can you make a decision that everyone disagrees with and still sleep soundly? Can you be called arrogant, cold, wrong, and not feel compelled to defend yourself? Most people can't. They need consensus. They need reassurance. They need to know they're still liked, even when they've done something difficult. That need is the chain. And every authority figure, every manipulator, every person who wants to control you knows exactly how to pull it. But if validation is the chain, what happens when you realize the people judging you have no power except what you give them? Everything collapses if you can't control yourself. You can master strategy, manipulation, perception. None of it matters if your own mind is chaos. Machiavelli's prince wasn't just skilled at controlling others. He was disciplined enough to control his own impulses, his own fears, his own need for comfort. External dominance is impossible without internal dominance. If you're ruled by urges, by anxiety, by the need for immediate gratification, you're not a strategist, you're a puppet reacting to internal strings you don't even see. Every uncontrolled desire is a vulnerability. Every unexamined fear is a point of leverage. The ones who rule understand this. They fought the hardest war first, the one against their own weakness, and they won. Look at where most people fail. They want power, but can't delay gratification. They want respect, but can't control their temper. They want freedom, but are enslaved by habits they refuse to break. You can't command others when you can't command yourself. It's visible. People see the lack of discipline. They see the impulsiveness, the emotional reactivity, the inability to endure discomfort, and they correctly assess that you're not a threat. You're not dangerous. You're just someone who talks about strength while being controlled by every passing mood and craving. Machiavelli would have dismissed you as useless, because a ruler who can't rule himself will be ruled by anyone with slightly more self-control. The hierarchy establishes itself automatically. I've watched people with immense potential destroy themselves through lack of internal governance. They had intelligence, opportunity, resources, but they couldn't stop sabotaging. They'd make progress, then binge on distraction. They'd build momentum, then collapse under stress because they never developed resilience. They blamed external circumstances, other people, bad luck. But the pattern was internal. They never established dominance over their own behavioral patterns. They were at the mercy of impulse. An impulse is random, short-sighted, destructive. It gives you what feels good now at the cost of what you actually want later. That trade is how most people waste their entire lives, chasing dopamine hits while their strategic objectives rot from neglect. Self-mastery isn't about perfection. It's about recognizing which behaviors serve your objectives and which behaviors serve your weakness, then systematically eliminating the latter. You want to build something significant? You need to control where your attention goes. Most people's attention is hijacked by algorithms, by drama, by whatever's most stimulating in the moment. They don't choose their focus. It's chosen for them. That makes them predictable and controllable at scale. The social media platforms, the entertainment industry, the consumer economy, they've all optimized for exploiting your lack of self-governance. They profit from your inability to resist stimulation. Machiavelli would recognize this as a form of conquest, not through violence, through the systematic exploitation of psychological weakness. And you're complicit every time you surrender control. The path to internal sovereignty is simple, but brutal. You identify the patterns that control you, the comfort-seeking, the approval-seeking, the distraction-seeking, and you starve them, not through willpower alone, but through environmental design. Remove temptation, remove easy paths to weakness. Create friction between yourself and every behavior that doesn't serve your objectives. This is what the Stoics practiced, not just philosophical contemplation, but operational discipline. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire while maintaining strict control over his own desires and reactions. That's not a coincidence. One enabled the other. You can't rule territory you don't control. And the first territory to control is your own nervous system, your own behavioral loops, your own mental real estate. Everything else flows from that. Machiavelli's laws aren't just about external manipulation. They're about becoming the kind of person capable of executing them without hesitation, without guilt, without the internal collapse that comes when you're still at war with yourself. Master that, and you've mastered the only thing that actually matters. You know the laws now. That makes you dangerous, or it makes you nothing. Knowledge without execution is just entertainment. You consumed this. You nodded along. But if you close this and go back to seeking approval, waiting for fairness, begging for respect, then Machiavelli is still superior to you. Not because you didn't understand, because you understood and did nothing. These 11 laws aren't separate. They're a system, and the system only works when you see the full architecture. There's one more piece you're missing. One law Machiavelli knew but never wrote explicitly. The law that holds everything together. The one that separates those who understand power from those who wield it. I already told you what it is in the previous video. The ruthless law Machiavelli never said out loud. If you skipped it, you're operating incomplete. If you haven't seen it, you don't have the foundation. These 11 laws are the structure. That one law is the core. Watch it. Now. Not later. Not when you feel like it. Now. Because every hour you delay is another hour. Someone else is using these principles against you while you're still figuring out the basics. The link is right there. Stop reading. Stop hesitating. Go. When you're done, come back here and write this in the comments. I see the game now. Not because I need your validation, because you need to mark the moment you stopped being controlled. Machiavelli didn't write for the masses. He wrote for the few who could stomach the truth and use it. Prove you're one of them.